Citizenship in ancient Rome was a privileged political and legal status afforded to free individuals with respect to laws, property, and governance. In the Roman Republic and later in the Roman Empire, people residing within the Roman state could roughly be divided into several classes. A male Roman citizen enjoyed a wide range of privileges and protections defined in detail by the Roman state. A citizen could, under certain exceptional circumstances, be deprived of his citizenship. Roman women had a limited form of citizenship. Though held in high regard, they were not allowed to vote to stand for civil or public office. The rich might participate in public life by funding building projects or sponsoring religious ceremonies and other events. Women had the right to own property, to engage in business, and to obtain a divorce, but their legal rights varied over time. Marriages were an important form of political alliance during the Republic. Client-state citizens and allies of Rome could receive a limited form of Roman citizenship such as the Latin Right. Such citizens could not vote to be elected in Roman elections. Slaves were considered property and lacked legal personhood. Over time, they acquired a few protections under Roman law. Some slaves were freed by manumission for services rendered, or through a testamentary provision when the master died. Once free, they faced few barriers, beyond normal social snobbery, to participating in Roman society. The principle that a person could become a citizen by law rather than birth was enshrined in Roman mythology. When Romulus defeated the Sabines in battle, he promised the war captives that were in Rome they could become citizens. Freedmen were former slaves who had gained their freedom. They were not automatically given citizenship and lacked some privileges such as running for executive magistracies. The children of freedmen and women were born as free citizens. For example, the father of the poet Horace was a freedman. Rights. The rights available to individual citizens of Rome varied over time, according to the place of origin, and the service to the state. They also varied under Roman law according to the classification of the individual within the state. Various legal classes were defined by the various combinations of legal rights that each class enjoyed. However, the possible rights available to citizens with whom Roman law addressed were ius suffragiorum, the right to vote in the Roman assemblies; ius honorum, the right to stand for civil or public office; ius commertii, the right to make legal contracts and to hold property as a Roman citizen; ius gentium, the legal recognition, developed in the 3rd century BC, of the growing international scope of Roman affairs, and the need for Roman law to deal with situations between Roman citizens and foreign persons. The ius gentium was therefore a Roman legal codification of the widely accepted international law of the time, and was based on the highly developed commercial law of the Greek city-states and of other maritime powers. The rights afforded by the ius gentium were considered to be held by all persons. It is thus a concept of human rights rather than rights attached to citizenship. Ius connubii, the right to have a lawful marriage with a Roman citizen according to Roman principles, to have the legal rights of the paterfamilias over the family, and for the children of any such marriage to be counted as Roman citizens. Ius migrationis, the right to preserve one's level of citizenship upon relocation to a polis of comparable status. For example, members of the Cives Romani maintained their full civitas when they migrated to a Roman colony with full rights under the law. A colonia civium Romanorum. Latins also had this right, and maintained their ius latii if they relocated to a different Latin state, a Latin colony. This right did not preserve one's level of citizenship should one relocate to a colony of less illegal status. Full Roman citizens relocating to a Latina colonia were reduced to the level of the ius laity, and such a migration and reduction in status had to be a voluntary act. The right of immunity from some taxes and other legal obligations, especially local rules and regulations, the right to sue in the courts and the right to be sued, the right to have a legal trial, the right to appeal from the decisions of magistrates and to appeal the lower court decisions. Following the early 2nd century BC Porcian laws, a Roman citizen could not be tortured or whipped and could commute sentences of death to voluntary exile, unless he was found guilty of treason. If accused of treason, a Roman citizen had the right to be tried in Rome, and even if sentenced to death, no Roman citizen could be sentenced to die on the cross. Roman citizenship was required in order to enlist in the Roman legions, but this was sometimes ignored. Citizen soldiers could be beaten by the centurions and senior officers for reasons related to discipline. Non-citizens joined the auxiliary and gained citizenship through service. Classes of citizenship. The legal classes varied over time. However, the following classes of legal status existed at various times within the Roman state. Cives Romani. The Cives Romani were full Roman citizens, who enjoyed full legal protection under Roman law. Cives Romani were subdivided into two classes: the non-optimo iure, who held the ius commerci and ius conabi; the optimo iure, who also held these rights as well as the ius suffragiorum and ius honorum. Latini. The Latini were a class of citizens who held the Latin rights, or the rights of ius commerci and ius migrationis, but not the ius connubii. The term Latini originally referred to the Latins, citizens of the Latin League who came under Roman control at the close of the Latin War, but eventually became a legal description rather than a national or ethnic one. Freedmen slaves, those of the Cives Romani convicted of crimes, or citizens settling Latin colonies could be given this status under the law. Socii foederati were citizens of states which had treaty obligations with Rome, under which typically certain legal rights of the state's citizens under Roman law were exchanged for agreed levels of military service, i.e., the Roman magistrates had the right to levy soldiers for the Roman legions from those states. However, foederati states that had at one time been conquered by Rome were exempt from payment of tribute to Rome due to the treaty status. Growing dissatisfaction with the rights afforded to the socii, and with the growing manpower demands of the legions led eventually to the social war of 9188 BC, in which the Italian allies revolted against Rome. The Lex Julia, passed in 90 BC, granted the rights of the Cives Romani to all Latini and socii states that had not participated in the social war, or who were willing to cease hostilities immediately. This was extended to all the Italian socii states when the war ended, effectively eliminating socii and Latini as legal and citizenship definitions. Provincials. Provincials were those people who fell under Roman influence or control, but who lacked even the rights of the foederati, essentially having only the rights of the ius gentium. Peregrini. A peregrinus was originally any person who was not a full Roman citizen, that is, someone who was not a member of the Cives Romani. With the expansion of Roman law to include more gradations of legal status, this term became less used, but the term peregrini included those of the Latini, socii, and provincials, as well as those subjects of foreign states. Citizenship as a tool of Romanization. Roman citizenship was also used as a tool of foreign policy and control. colonies and political allies would be granted a minor form of Roman citizenship, there being several graduated levels of citizenship and legal rights, the promise of improved status within the Roman sphere of influence, and the rivalry with one's neighbors for status, keep the focus of many of Rome's neighbors and allies centered on the status quo of Roman culture, rather than trying to subvert or overthrow Rome's influence. The granting of citizenship to allies and the conquered was a vital step in the process of Romanization. This step was one of the most effective political tools and original political ideas. Previously, Alexander the Great had tried to mingle his Greeks with the Persians, Egyptians, Syrians, etc., in order to assimilate the people of the conquered Persian Empire, but after his death this policy was largely ignored by his successors. The idea was to not do this assimilate but to turn a defeated and potentially rebellious enemy into a Roman citizen, instead of having to wait for the unavoidable revolt of a conquered people like Sparta and the conquered Helots. Rome tried to make those under its rule feel that they had a stake in the system. The Edict of Caracalla. The Edict of Caracalla was an edict issued in AD 212 by the Roman Emperor Caracalla, which declared that all free men in the Roman Empire were to be given full Roman citizenship and all free women in the empire were given the same rights as Roman women. Before 212, for the most part only inhabitants of Italia held full Roman citizenship. Colonies of Romans established in other provinces, Romans living in provinces, the inhabitants of various cities throughout the empire, and a few local nobles also held full citizenship. Provincials, on the other hand, were usually non-citizens, although some held the Latin rite.